over again. We have a budget workshop. The mic wasn't on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but not through the PA.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. That's better.
Can you hear me now?
All right. It's now 5:01, and we have a special call budget workshop. And some people may be coming in late, but I want to make sure, and we can always retread ground if we need to, but want to make sure questions, everybody has a chance to ask questions and all that good stuff. Where is Colleen? Hey, Colleen, do you want to come and sit in Mr. Cobb's place?
Sure. That is not what you said.
Or Marina's place? I know she's not coming. Why don't you come and sit in Mr. Cobb's place? All right.
That's next to me. She's putting you in the hot seat.
She's so excited.
That's right. So excited. Budget time's always so exciting. All right. So we've already gone over parks, all the three big Ps that take up most of the big bulk of the budget. I assume you guys have had plenty of time to review the rest of it. Shelby, did you have any questions since you were not able to be here the other night, or
I
did you?
not. My fellow council members asked some great questions, and I was able to get questions that I had answered. So.
Okay.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
Shared with me by, I don't even know who now, that seems like 100 years ago, last week. It was on Parks and Recs. It was about building new parks versus maintaining some of the parks we have, and I said both of them are in the budget. And I don't know.
We have no new building of parks in the budget.
Like, well, no, but I'm talking about, like, we just did the City Hall Park, we did the one at Cherry Lake, we've got that one fixed up. I think
Well-
they were looking for, is there more, and more things like Cherry Lake that we're gonna be making better?
Well, through AMP, they have approved another
That was a
large,
question asked me, I'm at.
all-inclusive
We
playground.
didn't know about that.
Yep. And so in terms of, it's been said repeatedly that we needed to live within the budget. Parks is
Yep.
always brought up that we're, in fact,
Okay.
Councilmember Williams, I've been told that you've said we are spending too much on parks. So, no, we had
I
no.
hadn't said that, but-
Okay, we have, so no, we have no new
Okay.
parks. The only place we can cut is parks. Can't cut police, can't cut the garbage
No.
being picked up, can't,
I told him I would ask the question, I asked the question.
yep. So at this point, I think when we are able to do things like that, it looks like it'll probably have to come through, AMP. And I will say though, over the past, not quite 2 years, we've already done a tremendous amount in parks. We'll continue to try to do things in park and keep improving and so forth, so.
I think that, the council's probably going to be looking the next few years to a
Say it
bond
again?
issue. I think the council's probably going to have to look in the next few years to a bond issue for the parks to do what needs to be done. There needs to be significant upgrades to the ballpark and things that we've talked about, and then there needs to be parks in the north part of the city that don't exist right now. And that kind of stuff's going to take more money than you can generate on just in your annual budget and your reserves. So
Right.
you're probably going to have to be looking at a bond issue in the next few years to be able to fund those sort of things.
And we may even have that opportunity this coming year, 2025. I have been talking to Stevens about it. It's, we've got great opportunity, but that's certainly not part of this budget. But
Right.
I think the main thing is we were trying to trim everything the best that we could. And so if you look at the small.
I had a question also.
Yeah, please.
And this didn't come from anybody in particular. This came from future ordinary citizen Charlie Harmon.
Uh-huh.
Gave me this question, and I brought up during the police deal last time the difference. We had combined two jobs the tech and the animal control officer.
Okay,
Those
animal
two
shelter.
positions.
Yes, sir.
I would just ask that we take a much closer look at possibly trying to give a bump to that position now that they're taking on extra responsibilities. Because we've got an animal control officer that did not do the tech duties before. They weren't cleaning cages and things like that. Now we're asking them to clean cages, and so the job has expanded, and I think we ought to give them a bump, and it'll make it more competitive, and it might improve our hiring, make it easier for hiring as well and maintaining people in those positions. But anyway, since we've increased the jobs, I would really like, next year, whenever you can, not necessarily this budget, but when you can, look at increasing the salaries for those people since we've increased the workload on them.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to push that a little harder.
Well, and I will say too, and, this is one of the things where at some point, the millage discussion is gonna need to, take place again. But, hopefully we can do a bond issue so that we can renovate the animal shelter because it needs to be expanded. It was built back when we were, a city of 10,000, so we need to renovate, expand, but that's gonna also mean more employees over there as well. So, and then we have to have a way of paying for those employees. So, I hear you. And I'm glad that you're gonna stay involved over at the animal shelter. That's great. All right. So on the smaller budgets, do you want to kind of take the lead on that? There's not a whole lot of change in the smaller departments.
Sure, and the new copy of the budget that you have in front of you is on legal, so it can hopefully be a little easier to read. The only other changes that were made were within street fund budget, where we split the sidewalks into sidewalks and projects, and then also the description of the salary line in police department that previously said clerical and code enforcement, now says civilian and code enforcement. So those are,
And
What page
Well-
numbers, please, ma'am?
that page number is page 6 for the police, and that's of the legal side.
Yes.
Yeah, because the page numbers are different now. And then the street fund is on page 23.
and just to remind you guys, that was the,
23 and 24.
we needed to separate the potential project involving Harps with the half-street improvement on Oakdale, as well as finishing out the Miller's, Brian, what is it? Miller's Park Road Street, sorry, which were the two things that had been agreed upon.
On 23 and
once they break
24,
ground.
which of those line numbers were actually changed? The street improvement, the sidewalk fund has its own line now, is that what you're saying?
That line was previously there, and all of the amount had been in that line, so
Yes.
now
It's separated.
it's decreased, and on the top of page 24 where it says street fund projects, that's a new account, where the other part that was split was there. It was
And
pre-
so let me compare it to the one that said street and sidewalks.
yes.
So it went from 500,000 down to,
Well, it was, yeah, it's 500,000 now. In the other version of the budget you had, it was like over it was like 1,048,000, I guess that was there.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
So I have questions. I don't know if it would be better to wait till the other council members are here, but there's a print off so you guys can see.
They're not all coming. Marina's not gonna be here.
Oh, Marina, okay, I didn't know. This is my basic question, concern, before we talk more about the other budgets. And so this is why, Colleen, you check my numbers, but I pulled the numbers from our workshop paperwork, but if I read the numbers right, we're pulling 50% of our available reserves to fund 20% of our annual budget. And that is alarming to me. So I feel like we need to make some cuts if that's accurate.
So, well, I mean, and, you know, based off of what the revenue, I mean, yes, if that's the, you know, projected total revenue number. However, I would, you know, say that out of the amount of reserves is a large amount for a one-time project. So I don't know that it's appropriate to cut all city departments to pay $5 million out of reserves for, you know, the public works facility.
But then maybe the council needs to work on cutting 2.6 million, because we're pulling 7.664088 from reserves, but only 5 million of that 7 million is for a truly, I would consider that, you know, that needs to come out of reserves. but-
I would say, yes, I mean, that would be the amount coming out of reserves. Now, some of those things are other capital projects, one-time expenses, not necessarily operating. But I would also say the page that I gave you that has the amount of available funds, reserve that was budgeted in prior year budgets, you know, starting in 2019, it was already $530,000. And since 2021, it's been at least $2 million that we have budgeted from reserves into this. So,
Right, but we're making huge, 500,000, 2 million, and now 7.6 million to come
But the-
out.
right, but it's
Yeah.
not,
So the one.
it's not comparing apples and apples, because in those other years when it was 2 million, that wasn't the public works facility. So it's really fairly comparable that in 2021, 2.3 million was budgeted from reserves, and this year, you know, it's
We've
2.9
got 2 million,
million.
we've got the same 2 million budgeted plus a capital expense budget that's 5 million. Let me ask, does this, with this reserve, this transfer from reserve, this still maintains our required minimum in reserve even after these transfers, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And what
I
is the
have said
required
from-
amount?
I have said for years, and I wish, there's somebody else that used to be on the council I wish was here. I have said for years, people do not pay taxes so we can create savings accounts with their money
No,
and
you're
not
right.
pay them interest. And if the law requires us to maintain a certain minimum amount
Gotta
in
have it.
reserves, that's what we need to maintain. The rest needs to be spent to provide services for the people who paid the taxes. It
That
doesn't
was
need to
great.
be held in a savings account where it doesn't pay the people who paid the taxes a blank dime. That's not our job, is to put their tax-paying money in a savings account and just let it sit there.
No, I would agree with that, but I just want us to be mindful. We got a big, so what I'm calling available is if the previous reserves go back and January 1, we're at 20 million again. That was the number I used. And then if we take 5 million and set it aside, because that's, you know, the expenditures, yep. So that's where I got the 15 million of available spending money. You know, and Kevin has made that point a lot about, you know, how much is too much. And I would argue that before we were saving too much, but at the same time, we would take 50% all at one time. But of that 15 million available, at least half, I don't know the exact number, came from one-time COVID funds. So it took us a long time to get there. So I would just caution us to be careful about how quickly, and stuff always costs more and takes longer. I haven't heard the presentation yet from Baldwin and Shell, but, you know, that's not even considering how much more that will be. You know, there's other things that, you know, likely are gonna need to come out of reserves. I think this budget needs to be cut.
So I would say that this budget is very much in line with the same budgets that you passed in 21, 22, 23. We have the same amount of reserves. A lot of cities did actual projects with their ARPA money. We did not. And we are finally doing a project with that ARPA money. We used it as a pass-through and for salaries, which was legal, and it's been in reserves, which did help us to bump up. But I don't know where you think there's 2 million to cut out of this budget.
And I would say, I would disagree that it's not comparable to 23, in that 23, the Parks Department had substantial projects on the budget for 23 and completed those, well, 24. 24 we had the parks. It's compared to 24. It's not the same it's the same as 23,
No.
but not the same as 24. 24 we had the substantial projects. If you look at the parks budget this year and compared to the parks budget that's on there for next year, and this was something that we were talking about before you got here, parks budget has been stripped of any projects. I mean, they're getting a pickup truck or a golf cart or something, and you know, that's their capital expenditures this year. There are no new projects in parks. There's no money for updating existing parks. I mean, it's just, there's not there anymore. And that's like the mayor was mentioning earlier, you can't cut police, you can't cut garbage services. You know, you just can't cut any of these other services. And where we could cut in parks has given it up. Said, okay, we won't do any new projects this year, and A&P is paying for one project, but Parks is not got any projects.
Wait, I'm not suggesting where to cut, and I never said anything about parks, but we're still funding 7% of our annual budget with reserves if you take out the 5 million for the, Public Works.
So the other thing that I'd say to that, which is the reason why reserves have been budgeted but haven't been used, is because there are other costs in the expenditure section that are not being met every year, whether there's a carryover of a project, whether there's vacancy savings from vacant positions. And so part of that is to adjust so that we can adequately record potential projected expenditures, even though that may not happen, because certain departments, you know, have vacant positions sometimes throughout the entire year, and those funds add up, and that also, those vacancy savings carry through not only in the salary line, but, you know, in insurance and retirement and all of those things. And so in order to budget, you know, what could be done, assuming all of things, there aren't enough revenues to balance that. But when you look historically, the revenues are in excess of budget and the expenditures are below. And so it's not, you know, while next year, you know, there are capital expenditures that will occur, the amount that's kind of been used to help, you know, balance the budget for capital projects and other things in prior years, it hasn't happened.
But if we didn't make a change, and let's say that we only spend 5 million for Public Works, and let's say it comes in right on the penny, to continue to take 7% at 2.4 million every year just to fund the budget, we can't do that.
But we haven't
Right,
spent
but we're
it.
not, yeah, we're not spending.
You're missing my point.
Let me see if I can help.
Okay.
Please.
Because I had a similar question and talked to Colleen today. On the piece that she did, the longitudinal, I think that was brilliant, by the way, Councilman, what's your name? April?
Broderick, yeah.
Yeah. If you'll go to the sheet 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2, with regard to where she did the longitudinal budget for the 5 years starting in 2020, that big bundle she gave us
Okay.
Wednesday night. Okay. If you'll see on page 2, the last 3 lines, it's a short page.
Yeah.
See, okay, go page 2, okay, right there, okay. Read it from the right. Start on the right and go backwards. This is where I was able to accept some things, okay?
Okay.
In 2020, the budget, we had 850 in reserve, that was available fund reserve. You see that 850 over there on that's the very last number? And keep coming across, but that was budgeted, 0 was used, because that right now, what was used, it was blank. So I actually did mine orange and green, orange and green. It was budgeted, but never was used. Okay, the same thing. The similar, you go into 2022, let's just jump to 2022. We had 4.4 million in reserve, okay? What happened actual, though, was we got the ARPA money coming in, and that boosted us up a little bit. But if you notice that was 6 million, not 8, like I tried to read with this little font. Anyway, so 6, that's 10 million. We actually used some of that for police salaries for COVID, okay? So that had us, then was only a budget of 6 million in reserve. Under 2023, we still had 6 million in reserve. So in other words, from the ARPA money, we used it for the COVID relief stuff, one-time money, and we're still, obviously with some of it not used, that we kept in reserve, or some, but anyway, the reserve went up, is what I'm trying to say. Similarly, the next year in 2023, actual We actually had some more revenue coming in again from the remaining of the ARPA money, which made us go from that 6 up to the present 9. And in 2024, to date, we have used 0 of that reserve money. So it's budgeted in there, and it's not been, so we have a pattern.
But
This
this
is what-
year will be used because we're actually
That-
doing the construction.
Hang on, I think you're right on that, but that's something we knew in advance when we decided to purchase that land, that we were going to have to use some reserve.
Yes.
Now, so I'm trying to put these two pieces together. Yes, we've budgeted the reserve. We've not really, we've spent some, obviously, because that was the ARPA money. We were supposed to spend some of that. But the reserve dollar never went down. It went up a little bit with the leftover ARPA money. But the other thing that happened about that is we know of that 9 million we have there, we're gonna have to spend X number of that, I don't know what the dollar amount is, 5 million, whatever it was, is gonna be for the public works piece. We've already bought the land, whatever, whenever we have them come in and do the presentation. But that's, and this is, I think, what Charlie was saying a while ago, for reserves, it's okay to use it one time, just don't make it be budgeted for recurring costs. Now, we're not gonna have any more ARPA money coming in, thank God, we prayed that we don't have it, that means more tornadoes or whatever. So this would be a kind of a stable amount, but we only had 850,000 for years.
No, that's not right. We had more, we had built up.
I don't know what we had before
There was
2020.
like 12 million in reserves total by
But now,
20.
okay, you're adding.
No.
This is,
I'm talking about total
okay,
reserves.
yeah, you're right, though,
We
hang
had
on.
built up
But hang on a minute.
No.
It is, let me finish. There's 2 reserves. There's the street reserves, wastewater reserves.
Okay, I'm talking
And general fund reserves. So all those put together is more.
Yeah.
But this helped me see that it had been budgeted, not used, not budgeted, not used. I was concerned how it went up. That was the ARPA money, so that brought that to light for me. Your point's well taken, but I don't know that I'm not as scared of it right this minute as I might have been.
Look, I just look at it this way. If, let's say, this time next year, everything is the same, but we take out 5 million because.
Yep, then we only have 4
built the-
million.
So now our budget would be 32,
Mm-hmm.
806, 206. Well, then we would still have to pull 2,664,000. You see what I'm saying? We can only do that 3 more times because if we're not adding to our reserves, we're using reserves to fund our general budget.
So,
We functioned for years with no
What'd you say,
funding,
Charlie?
zero
Couldn't hear-
from reserves. But, I mean, the situation is, we have been budgeting 2 million, or so from reserves for several years. And
Yes.
we've been spending 0. We have, because our revenue, we've been able to cover it with revenue, savings, whatever, we've actually spent 0. That's what Beverly's talking about, except for the ARPA year where we spent some reserves for police salaries, which
Which required
basically
it.
what it was intended for. Now, this year, we've decided that we're gonna spend $5 million of reserves, and like she said, we decided that back when we bought the land. We're gonna spend $5 million of reserves on that project. And we're still going to budget the 2 million that we've been budgeting for years on the other types of regular budgeting items that we've been budgeting it for years. We're not gonna cut the capital expenditures in police. We're not gonna cut the truck that Public Works needs. We're not gonna cut these things, but we are going to take an additional 5 million out. And it's still gonna leave us more than what we're legally required to have in reserves, okay? So we're gonna have the 5 million, plus we're gonna have, how much more after the 5 million? I don't know. Anyway,
2.9.
2.9? So we're gonna have $7.9 million in reserves at that point. And then, if we don't make the money back, then we have $7.9 million in reserves, okay? That's good. We've got a reserve account more than what is required, and that's good. That's where a city is supposed to be. The city is not supposed to, like I said again, I'm gonna say it again now for these two guys' benefit, we're not supposed to save taxpayers' money in an account. That's not why people pay us tax money. We're required to hold $5 million, but everything over that we hold, we need to figure out a way to use it and to provide benefits for the taxpayers who paid that tax money, not to hold it in an account somewhere and accumulate and accumulate and accumulate where it doesn't pay them interest. If they know we're piling up large reserves, they're gonna be angry.
I
That's
think
not with the city.
That's a great point. My point is,
Caution.
yes, and to, when we could budget 2 million when we weren't taking big chunks out, but when we have taken out a 5 million and it's steadily going down, to continue to, 2 million, 2
But
million, 2
it's not
million.
steadily, this is the part I don't understand. It's not steadily going down.
Well,
It's-
to Charlie's point, it's going to go down.
It's
if
gonna go
we
down
use
one
it.
time. ARPA monies were supposed to be for one-time capital expenses. They were
But
to
that's-
build projects and stimulate the economy and so forth. And we haven't even, like, used all of that that's, like, in reserves. So it's not like, and if you look, this budget's less than the budget was the year before. And we've consistently budgeted a certain way, but you're making it sound like every year we're spending
No,
down reserves,
no,
and
no.
we're not.
No, you're missing my point. Reserves should be used for these one-time things, okay? I'm with you on that. My concern is when we're having to use reserves to fund our regular, just, you know, to buy new trucks and things like that, that's really just part of maintenance. I mean, that should kind of be in our, built into our budget.
We don't
And so
have
that is.
$2 million worth of vehicles.
But that's my point. We
So-
don't have $7.6 million
we-
of one-time expenditures. And so that's my caution, is to be mindful of using reserves to fund the general fund budget. That's not wise.
I think your point's well taken.
So-
Because you could definitely decline.
Again, what I would say is that if you look at the budgeted revenues, all of the different types of revenues, the city has very conservatively budgeted historically. I have increased sales tax amounts, but the city budgets so that we can be
Worst
over
case.
budget in revenues. And so, you know, because of that, there is a difference in revenues and expenditures. So whereas expenditures, we're being very conservative and including all potentials. Whereas, you know, police historically has had a certain number of officers that are open at any one time through attrition or that kind of thing. And, you know, 5 officers, for example, is close to what, $700,000, $800,000 in salary, retirement insurance. And so if you have 5 officers all year long, either through someone leaving and now there's another opening, and this is just an example because it goes throughout the general fund where these, you know, you're never meeting the budgeted expenditures. If you look historically for the past 5 years at the amount of expense, it's been below the amount of revenue. And so, you know, what we could do is not budget any reserves, but also not budget vacancy saving. I mean, assuming a certain number of vacant positions, you know.
You
but
can't do that.
Yeah,
You
I don't-
can't,
You have
which
to
is
budget
why
every
this
position
is.
on the
No,
book that's
and-
been
You have to budget the first
Yeah,
time.
and
I'm
2
going
million,
to-
you're talking like slashing, like.
I'm going
you'd
to
have
interrupt
We'd have
everybody.
to cut
for-
total departments.
I'm going to interrupt everybody for a second. We now have only 30 minutes to get through the remainder of the budget by the end of the meeting instead
Thank
of the
you.
hour that we started with. I really think we need to get started with those other budget things, but I take your point, and I think that it's a good
I
caution.
think it's a good point.
But
I have 2 questions before we get off. Colleen, you may have answered this, and I apologize if you did. Well, just going back to the 24 budget, the 9.6 that was budgeted, I know we're not at the end of the year, but is it looking like all that will go back?
Yeah, it's
But
not
you
the
can
end,
tell.
it's not the end of the year right now, but we
Right.
haven't used any so far, and
Okay.
based off of like progress on certain projects and increase in other areas of revenue, I would, you know,
Right. I'm not holding you to that. I
cautiously
understand.
optimistic that
Right.
that money will, you know, not be spent
Okay.
this year.
The other question was, is the 5 month, or I'm sorry, the 5 million, excuse me, the 5 million, is that a flat, or I thought somewhere along the line it said it was 6 months worth of operating that had to be legally held?
So the
6
Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend that at a minimum you keep 2 months' worth of budgeted revenues or expenditures, which for the city is close to $4.8 million.
So it's 2 months worth of operating.
4.8 million.
It's not like, it's the law.
It's not
This
the
is
law.
best
It's
practices,
Best practices, and you don't mess with
if
that
that
one.
makes sense.
But
So-
there was one page on reserves information that was handed out, and for example, you know, assuming right now, if all of the 9.6 of budgeted, you know, committed reserves was used, we would be, you know, left with close to $11 million. And if you subtract that 4.8 for the 2 months worth of reserves, that still leaves close to 6.2 million.
Is that in this, Colleen? I'm sorry.
Legal paper, or regular
Yes,
paper?
It was small paper. It's probably behind, letter size, probably behind the 5-year summary potentially, paper clipped separately.
Yep, thank you.
You know, I would call out too, when we're talking about reserves and 2 months of reserves in operating expense. With operating expense, you're talking about keeping the lights on, keeping payroll paid. I mean, if we got to a point where, you know, we were running out of money, a lot of the capital spend that we've looked at and approved over the years, that would have to come to a halt so that we could take care of operating expenses first. So, you know, when you look at, you know, 2 months, you can take the budget and say, okay, 2 months equals, you know, 4.8 million or whatever the number was that Colleen shared, but that's an all-in number. You know, that includes all of your capital expenses, everything that we've talked about. So that's more than what I consider operating expenses. So,
That's
Just
when you
another
drive the
point
trucks
of
with
view.
200,000 miles on them. There's, if you want to move on to, if everybody's through with that, I do have 2 things under engineering department I'd like to discuss.
Is administrative first? Administration?
I didn't know that she was going
At
in
this
order.
point, we
page are
can
we
just
on?
jump around.
So if we're looking at engineering, that's
Right.
page,
Eight.
yes.
Um,
No, it would be page,
Big one, yes. Kyle.
of the small one,
It's
it's,
8.
okay, the large page, it's page 10, is
Okay,
engineering.
thank you, Mayor, very much.
The bigger print isn't helping her much.
I had 2 questions. I hope I can remember what they are, to not the marked up page. I did notice that this year we did not have our salary engineer budgeted or the plan. I was looking at how much we spent. I asked for a printout of how much we spent on Garver with regard to James, our planner, and how much we spent with TEC regarding our engineering prices. So we had that, you know, salary for a director. I guess I'm asking, is our intent that we're not going to hire an engineer, we're just going to continue doing consulting services?
The salary amount is included in the line for salaries. It's just not split out because we
Okay,
didn't
so it's down
split, yes, any out in '24.
So that whole director salary went away in the new structure that you did. So my question is, are we double budgeting here for a contracted services and then we still have salary for a engineer? Because you understand my question? We've had a salary for an engineer, but we're contracting it out. We've had them both in the budget.
Right, so. you want me
I
to
don't
speak
see
to
this
that?
coming,
So-
I don't see this coming down.
So, we've got money for an engineer in case we get somebody qualified who applies and so forth, so that we can indeed then hire them. Now, I will tell you, the entire time that I was on council, I cannot speak to when I was not on council, so going back that many years, we always had an engineer, but we also had consultants. We always had both. That was always a bone of contention, was the fact that we had a high engineering person, but most of the work was outsourced anyway.
Okay, so, and the same thing here, we have an employee, a planner. So,
She's not fully certified yet, and so.
Oh, I thought she was
No,
at
ma'am,
Jennifer.
she's not fully certified yet, and it helps her, it's moved her, that ball so much further down having James also on staff,
Okay.
because he's the one who teaches the classes. He
I understand.
double checks, he works with her, so.
So- I don't want to discuss it personally. I didn't know when, so that should terminate at some point in time when we have a fully licensed planner. Is that correct? I'm asking a question about budgeting.
Once we
Okay.
can, but she will still rely some on a planning consultant. That's, they always do. But in terms of that, our hope is that once all the certifications are done, she turns into the planning director.
Because I was seeing, you
And
know,
the
it's 200,
expenses for James will go down.
well, it's got a $200,000 budget right there.
Well, that's
for consultants.
$200,000 is not just for James, it's for the,
Well,
for engineering.
For the
also, right?
engineering was $71,000 so far in 2024, 2023. 89,000 was spent in engineering contract this year so far for
And so
the
this, but
plan.
this 200,000 is both planning and engineering.
I'm
contract
assuming so,
services, right?
yes,
Okay, all
yes.
right. Well, the engineering will continue, the engineering portion will continue. The engineering portion will continue, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Okay.
So, okay.
So I was just, you know, I wanted to know what the consultant versus what we're gonna do for permanent employee.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think it's a good question.
Thank you.
I had no questions, by the way.
Anybody else on that?
I had another question. I wrote a note on my thing from last Wednesday on the sidewalk, and I know you've broken it out. I wrote a note, was it said Wednesday that we spent 300,000 on the Kill Avenue sidewalk project so far? What was
Brian,
that- was
would
that
you like to
right?
come up and speak to that? I
I wrote that note down, but I wasn't sure that that was what
believe that's
referring-
true.
We've spent the better part of the 300,000 on the Kill Avenue. There's been a few little gaps that we filled in, but the vast majority of it was.
Okay. And that's gonna
It's
be-
not all, but it's the bulk.
Right.
So that project will be totally finished this year, will be carried over to 25?
That's our hope.
It's, I would like to say so, but it's, you know, it's hard to say being, you know, how we're doing small segments at a time. We just haven't designed it from a standpoint to where you can actually put a price on it. We're just doing segments as we can get them done. But
hear
I
you.
think it will take us a long ways towards getting them complete
Okay.
this year.
Thank you, Brian. I wrote a note, then didn't remember what it said.
Yeah.
Administration?
So,
Aren't we looking at a new software program somewhere for
yes,
the city?
yes, it's in finance, in 16.
It's being financed, okay.
No,
so-
it's in the department for finance.
Okay, I saw in finance it was about $9,000. I thought it cost a lot more than that.
Yes. Administration
40,000.
is,
It was about the capital
And one of the
investment.
things I wanted to bring up on administration, so under insurance for city council, there is, one thing that we can do is, and I think that kind of looking at utilization going forward for this next year, I would propose that it would actually be a budget savings if we no longer pay for insurance for city council members, since it's really not a full-time job, but instead increase the amount we pay to city council members by like $400, let's say. I do think we're going to eventually need to look at potentially moving to 2 meetings a month. So I certainly, you know, see that eventually it's justified with you all being able to do more, but it ends up being a cost savings in terms of the budget overall of, is that correct? $16,083.92.
Say it one more time, please.
It would end up being a cost savings in terms of the budget, so, of $16,083.92. We have searched and searched and searched, and we can find nothing, no ordinances or resolution that ever mandated that city council get health insurance. It's just something that was done. We also couldn't find there's nothing that mandates it from a state level either. So I need to kind of open that up to you all to see what you all think about it. I think at one time things were different. Now with, after Obamacare and so forth, most people now have insurance because the businesses have to, either through their spouse or through them. And in terms of candidates coming in, they all are gainfully employed, with the exception of our current council member, Ms. Brooks, but I don't know that she could use that $400 to, buy insurance if need be. But anyway, I just need to know what you all want to do. It's completely up to y'all. It can be kept the same or we can change it, but I feel like now would be a good time.
Is Ms. Brooks currently insured under the city plan?
She is the only one who would still be on here that is, well, no, everybody's insured, utilizes.
Let's not discuss individuals, please.
I don't want to know if we're dumping anybody.
No.
So one question I have is, if we change that, is that gonna affect anybody that's off the council now, like any old people, old council members or mayor? Former.
Watch your language, young man.
Hey.
Former is what he
Former.
meant.
Gummit.
No, there's a set amount.
Go to timeout.
January 1, we're old people.
I digress.
No, it's a set, yeah. It was a set amount that was determined by council. It used to be $250, and I think it got
300
bumped up
now.
to $300.
You see that in the monthly statements. that
Yes,
they're paid
right.
them.
So,
you're
no,
sta-
that would continue.
Yeah, so you're stating that to change that is a savings of $16,000.
Yes, it would be a savings. So it's actually a benefit in terms of the taxpayers, so. And I just,
that down.
since it's not really being
Write that down.
utilized by all. But anyway,
So where do you see that in the budget? I mean, where is it, what line item?
it's just under all the insurances.
Group insurance?
Yes.
Yeah, on the big page, page 6.
I had these in such a good order, too.
Mine's on 5, big page 5.
The 6 is police.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
the
sorry,
very
you're
top
right.
of page 5.
So talk me through it.
Go ahead.
So right now, what's included in the budget it is not what the mayor has proposed. So
Okay.
this includes an estimate of 2025's insurance amount. But
Okay.
there was a small page, I think, that you received last week too, where it shows, the estimated insurance amount for council members is $54,500.
Oh, yeah,
year.
that's a big savings, yeah.
So, but the, net change would be 16 with the increase.
With the increase and that's salary increase.
So,
So right here where it says the difference, so instead of 238, it'd be 16 less? on
Yes.
the- Okay.
Well, it would be 54, 55 less where it's 1.82 million, but
Okay.
in the salary line on page 4, I think of the large page, that
Okay.
where it says elected official salary, that line would
Gotcha.
increase
Yep.
$38,400.
I'm on page 4 now. Did that include the 3% for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Do we include a 3% for the retired folks?
Yes.
The $300, or is that a
No,
set amount?
no, that's a set
But
amount.
The retired mayor, city clerk, they do receive a COLA.
And that's once again by state statute and ordinance.
Or does,
And that,
So
And
that seems like a
amount is
no-brainer.
That amount is an expense reimbursement, so that's another thing I'm thinking about. For retired council members, they get an expense reimbursement for Medicare insurance, is the way that was originally set up, or whatever insurance they
It's a
have when they
flat
come off.
$300 a month.
Of a flat $300 a month. And if you added that $400 to the monthly expense, so that the monthly expense was $500 instead of $400, monthly expense check we get, then that would be treating the current council members the same way, as an expense reimbursement for insurance, instead of having payroll taxes and things taken out of it by adding it to the check. So those current council members and retired council members would be being treated the same way. It would reduce the savings somewhat, but it would be more equitable treatment between current council members and retired council members that way. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
Consensus appears that most of us are in favor of it. Because he's gonna be one of those old timers, you just.
I'm gonna be one of the old guys. Actually, he's the youngest one.
Yeah, he's the kid.
Okay, so you would like, so we can make that change, and so we'll change y'all's expenses, increase that by the 400, and then we'll reduce and take out the insurance. Does that,
I'm in
Okay.
agreement.
all right,
That agrees.
okay. We're getting short on time, so there is, would you like to talk about in the finance?
Sure.
Finance office, a new
So-
category.
Yes, page 8 of the legal size paper has the finance department budget, which was new in 2024. The line in software is increasing by 9,000 because the business license software currently utilized by the city is made in-house and is it's so old that it's preventing upgrades to the computers. So that's something that, we'll have to search for. In the capital disbursements line, this is a carryover that was in the budget for this year, which is a new financial software or enterprise resource planning software for the department. The city's current software is end of life in 2029. It's no longer being supported by Microsoft, and like payroll tax updates will cease at that point. And this is a project that will take a few years to implement.
So will the expense happen now, or will just a portion of this happen in 25?
A portion most likely will happen in 25, but, this hasn't been bid out yet, so this is just an estimate of what the cost could be.
Now, Colleen, didn't we just buy some software package for payroll or something that,
So we did get a new timekeeping software
Yes.
package and a scheduling package for the police department. So that works independently of our current financial software. We just import basically leave information or hours worked into our current system, and that will work with thousands of different software. We checked that in the front end to make sure whenever we move financial softwares that it will still work going forward.
having an accountant is a very new position for your office. Can you comment about, it's a good thing that, what the benefits were for putting that position in there, not the
Yes.
person, the position?
Yes, we've had, a few transitions, so the position wasn't filled until later in the year. However, it's great as far as a standpoint from analysis, for reconciliation of the various accounts in the city, where previously just the bank accounts were being reconciled, when really all liability accounts need to be reconciled. And so there's multiple ongoing projects that are kind of resolving old issues throughout our system right now.
Okay. I missed that. What line item is that? I'm sorry. Are we on
For the accountant,
Yes.
it's just included in the salaries line, but it was in the 2024 budget.
To have a CPA on staff?
Just an accountant to do,
But a
not
certified
necessarily
accountant.
CPA.
A certified accountant.
Yes, someone,
No,
or
no, not
someone that has an
CPA.
accounting degree and experience specifically related to analysis and reconciliation.
So this actually is the treasurer, you, the accountant, and 2 or 3 support staff?
Everyone that's in that
Everybody in the
office is,
Even payroll and everybody?
yes,
Okay,
that's under
gotcha.
finance, yes,
Thank you, ma'am. So that's 1, 2,
other than Charlotte, of course.
3, 5 people. We've done 5 or 6.
We got a 9-minute break now if we're finished.
7, including me.
Any other?
Are we finished, guys?
No, but we got some more pages done.
You're not finished?
For tonight, we are.
I would ask that instead of us going through line by line by line by line by line of every single page, which I have found out the other cities do not do, if we've gone over all the major budgets, if you guys have any questions on anything, please call up Colleen and she can go
Okay.
over with you guys so that way we're not calling a budget meeting unnecessarily that people can't attend. So, all right, is there anything else? If not, we'll have a brief recess. All right.
Okay. Calling everybody over.